So, if I'm being honest, I was slightly nervous to be giving this talk, just due to the nature and the relevance of my topic. During my AP seminar class last year, I decided to research the topic of parental control. Not the most tame topic for a high schooler, I know, but bear with me. As an Asian child myself, I have firsthand seen the effects of parental control as well as experienced it to some degree, so it's never a topic that I wish to speak lightly about. However, the effects of this phenomenon and how deeply rooted it is within our culture is what drives me to speak about it, despite it perhaps being sensitive to some in the audience. Living as an international student abroad, I've gathered a lot of insight on this topic, as whenever I spoke with my friends, it seemed as if hardships or strained relationships were an automatic byproduct of just being a child in the Asian community. But not any of my Western friends who had different racial or ethnic backgrounds seem to relate to this. As sad of a realization as it is, we do have to admit that there is a larger norm of toxic family dynamics within the Asian community than any other culture in the world. To begin, parental control is often described as intrusiveness, pressure, or domination over different aspects of a child's life. The main one that we may all be familiar with is the academic. The importance of environmental stability is often overlooked, but adolescents have to negotiate the physical, cognitive, and socio-emotional changes when it comes to the transition from childhood to young adulthood, according to Professor Farver from the University of Southern California. Before I move on into discussing different aspects of parental control, I'd like to clarify that when I'm using descriptors such as harmful or toxic, I'm talking about the psychological effects on a child's well-being. There is no perfect type of parenting, nor am I here to criticize anyone on how their family is set up. But I do wish to highlight the factors of the Asian community that leaves our children a lot more emotionally scarred than other cultures in the world. Emotional manipulation isn't the only factor when it comes to parental control, as there are different theories and explanations that are linked with this issue. Professor Tuggle from Auburn University elaborates on the social exchange theory, which explains that individuals are basically driven by rewards for maintaining relationships. She elaborates that this is a key point in how parents are able to take advantage of their children, whether it is intentional or not. In addition, with social synchrony being a huge part of the Asian community, there is a negative outlook on individuality in children, as taking on your parents' decision on as your own provides a way for a child to harmonize with their family. A lot of parents or people often justify this type of behavior by saying that parents know what's best for you, or they're saying certain things out of worry and concern. But the key point is that when that worry and concern is overbearing and crosses a line of reasonable interference, it can lead to destructive obedience, which is often followed by even further psychological damage during an adolescent's youth. This leads me to the first type of parenting that I analyzed, which is helicopter parenting, often defined as a parent's overprotection or involvement in an adolescent's life. Researcher Jiwon from Santa Clara University investigated the psychological and behavioral control within Korean and American samples in order to investigate the differences between parental control in different cultural backgrounds. She found that the Korean sample showed much higher levels of helicopter parenting that correlated with children's maladjustment issues, as well as internal-external problems with higher levels of control. Many parents within the study were not able to identify themselves with helicopter parenting, since no one really wants to admit to borderline manipulating their children. But however, a lot of patterns that we witness within helicopter parenting can be seen in the average Asian parenting styles, as there is a bigger culture to push their child for success. However, it seems oftentimes that that push for success ends up being a projection of parents' past ambitions onto their children, rather than looking out or hoping the best for them. Author Kathy T. Doe from the University of North Carolina conducted an fMRI study to analyze brain activities that indicated stress within different teenage samples that were presented with conflicting opinions from different parties. She found that the results showed that children were indicating the most amount of stress when it came to conflicting opinions from specifically their parents. A lot of them actually ended up assimilating a lot of their own morals or opinions to fit to those of their authoritative figures. From this, we can see that children hold their parents on a very high pedestal when it comes to decision-making for a lot of aspects in their lives. Researchers have deduced that this type of behavior stems from concepts such as familism, high conformity, as well as generational trauma in the Asian community. Familism is the ideology in which an individual essentially puts a family's priorities over their own, or quote-unquote family first, as many of you may have heard. While it's often used within welfare systems in order to advocate for more family involvement for care, within the Asian community, it's interpreted slightly differently, where it's harmful in the way that it leads to lower levels of independence, as well as rejecting the levels of differentiation from a child's emerging individuality during their adolescent years. In addition, generational trauma is harmful in the fact that it consists of a consistent cycle over multiple generations and hundreds of years of history. Because parents who have been involved in this cycle are either unaware of this effect or are unable to stop it, they end up unknowingly or unintentionally passing down their trauma to their own children. This leads to common symptoms of generational trauma, which are low self-esteem issues, higher levels of self-destructive behaviors, and overall higher levels of anxiety, which are also symptoms that correlate with different patterns of parental control. When discussing the different effects of psychological issues that relate with parental control, we can't leave out the discussion of longevity. Professor Chris Surgeon from the University of Arizona conducted a study in order to analyze these different long-lasting issues within the relationships between different family members, mainly focusing on the relations between the parent and child. He found that overparenting was associated with lower levels of parent-child communication, as well as lower family satisfaction rates reported overall. In addition, when parents were seen to either neglect or be constantly overbearing towards their children, they were categorized as a form of enmeshment trauma in which effective connections were too strong and boundaries too vague for the family's own benefit. As a result of this, a lot of the children end up failing to establish personal adjustment as well as maintain communication with their family. Unfortunately, as a child grows up, the distance placed between the parent and child, whether it is emotional or physical, can last longer than just a few years, with a lot of children in the study actually being seen to cut contact from their parents out of fear or resentment from the past. The main issue that lies with parental control is the fact that this phenomenon is deeply rooted in conformity that is a natural part of our cultural norms. Due to this, there is no real, tangible, nor immediate solution that we can put in place in order to work for improvement, but this doesn't necessarily mean that there is no hope for the psychological safety of our children. The clear relations between parental control and the decreased well-being in a child's psychological state needs to act as a push for parents or anyone in general to work towards creating safer environments for our future generations. Perhaps the issues of parental control and the harmful cycles were started by our great-great ancestors, but the change into a more progressive society as a whole and making sure we can establish safer environments for our future generation needs to begin with us taking the first steps, whether we are parent or child. Thank you.